It's the best, hands down.
It's crystal clear.
I love it. The things you can make are awesome.
No one else has quality epoxy like this.
It's easy to mix.
Tim is such a wealth of knowledge.
It's gotta be iCoat.
Welcome to the Resin Mastery Podcast, exploring ICO Epoxy. So welcome back to Resin Mastery, exploring ICO Epoxy. Rachel, it's 2026. Can you believe it?
Well, not really, no. 2025 just went by so fast. 2026 came up very quickly, and I cannot believe that it is a new year, although it does feel like a new year, so that's at least a good start.
Well, the great crazy thing as well, right? You've only been married for 4 months, but actually you've been married in 2 different years at this point.
Right. I didn't even think about that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it just makes the whole thing seem longer. So,
yeah.
Welcome back, and I hope you had a great Christmas and New Year, and now we're in the winter months where people are chilly out there, and they're wondering, do I get projects now? But I'll tell people this. In my own world right now, Rach, I've got maybe 3 people who are getting married in the next 3 months.
Wow. Yep. It's that time. People want to get.
One of them is in a couple of weeks. And that means they're getting married in the winter, in the cold, and they want their bouquets preserved.
Yeah.
So for all you artists out there, you're going to need to be still making hay and getting these clients' jobs done. But what we're going to cover today is how to work with epoxy in cold weather. I actually published on iCoatepoxy.com a great article on this, and I sent out an email. If you didn't get the email, let me know. I'll double check you're on the list. But it covers how to handle, cold weather. And, I think for anyone who's tried it before, without a few little tweaks, pouring in cold winter weather ends up with thick resin, trapped bubbles, and a project that just won't cure well. And if this is you, then I think you should tune in and sit down for 10 minutes for a cup of coffee and listen to how we can sort of turn you on to better ways of doing things.
Oh, yeah, of course. And, cold weather doesn't mean that you have to stop working with epoxy. But like he said previously, it really does just mean that you need to tweak a few things, just like any other thing. There's certain things you need to do to your car in the winter. If you live in snow, you have to shovel snow off, and that's just how you have to drive. So it's, just minor things. It's not that big of a deal as snow on your car is even. So if you live in one of those snowy states right now, I have some good news for you.
Right. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to, and I think we may have said this in one of our other episodes, Rach, which is mixing epoxy is not like mixing eggs and milk or, making banana bread. There's a chemical reaction happens when you mix part A and part B together with epoxy resin.
Yes.
When that happens, things start to change within the molecules of both parts pretty quickly. And the temperature, the humidity, and just the viscosity and the speed of mixing, all of these things play a part in making sure you get a really good mix. And temperature being a huge one, right? So when epoxy chemistry is done in the winter and temperatures are down, the chemistry slows down.
Yeah. No, and it really does. I mean, and if this is just for the housewives out there or men. But it's the same thing for a sourdough, actually. If you put it in the fridge, it's a slow ferment. If it's out on the counter, it's a regular ferment. And that's also in and of itself like a biochemical reaction that's going on. And so when you are, dealing with anything like dramatic temperature changes, like some parts of the country, even here in Arizona, where, we're getting some really cold weather, so you are going to see a difference. And so the key takeaway of it is that like epoxy doesn't fail in the winter, but that conditions do. So we can't just rely on everything to constantly remain the same. But if we make those minor changes, then we can get a better cure. We can go ahead and really, pump those products out for our customers, right? And so I think, kind of what are some of the biggest mistakes that people make are trying to solve the problem just by heating the room. That doesn't really work as well as some other things because it's high energy costs, uneven temperatures in garages and workshops. And yeah, it just doesn't guarantee that the molds will be, heated enough. So,
right. But one thing I think they've got to watch and understand, Rach, is that when epoxy becomes cold, it becomes thicker, it becomes more harder, and it becomes harder to mix. It becomes harder to pour and spread and level. Mm-hmm. And it actually, when it's colder, it actually traps more bubbles. So you can go on our AI agent on the website. It will give you the right temperature to use for each different epoxy that we have. Obviously, iCoat has the most epoxies of any company out there, the most professional pieces you can use. We have, and a temperature gun, I would say, is one of your best friends. But I think a lot of people make some mistakes with this because you mentioned it well, right? Some people just try and make the whole room warmer. But the trouble is, it's like, my wife will get into bed and the room's nice and warm, but her hands are still cold.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we go about making sure all the pieces that we're using are at the right temperature, right? Because we don't want longer cure times. We don't want badly curing epoxy. We want it to work well in their most optimal optimal conditions. Yeah. And those optimal conditions, we've laid out for each one of our products to help you do that. So, one of the things to think about in there, like you said, is if you heat the garage or heat a house, you're going to have one area is going to be 65, another area is going to be 80, another area is going to 70 something. And all of a sudden you've got this, living nightmare on your hands.
Yeah. Well, and that's the funny part is, you could you would literally have to come up with this very specific and special formula to figure out the exact way to heat a room based on, the elements around you, based on what the room is made out of. And you don't want to do all that work. That would be crazy. So the easiest way to kind of deal with this is to realize, it's targeted heat, right? That's a super easy solution. So kind of moving into that, and being a smarter approach, like you want to focus on warmth. So the resin bottles, keeping those warm, the molds, keeping them warm and prepping them, if that means putting them on a heated mat before you use them, getting them to a certain temperature using that heat gun. That's a super easy fix. You want to make sure that the surface under your project isn't going to be too cold, like something like marble or granite, things that are stone that are going to be very cold and very room temp and take a long time to heat up. And then so when you think about it, cold molds will put heat out of warm resin instantly. So think about, if you have, most molds are silicone, right? If you have ever used silicone oven mitts, that's you can't feel the heat on your hands. And the reason is because silicone is so heat resistant that it will remain the same temperature, very easily, whether it just be on one side or both sides. And then when it comes to kind of moving into the next step and thinking about it, you got to say, okay, both the resin and the mold must be warm for success, or else we're going to have an issue there. And then so Ian can go over some, tools that you can use to do that.
Yeah. So, on that point, it's, silicon's one of those things that is great for preventing heat, but you can actually chill it. And it actually is one of those things, especially the harder silicon molds. They can actually retain a lower temperature longer, which is why you want to heat them up. So we don't actually sell these, just so everyone knows. If you go to iCoateepoxy.com, we have a tools link all we do is recommend things. Now, Tim, in the email I sent out, did for me an amazing video showing all different ways and ideas for heating your area that you're working within. So once you've got a room at a decent temperature, you've got your buckets for heating your epoxy in with the lids on, heat gun to measure where they are temperature wise, and then you've got your surface area also warmed. So whether you're using large heating mats or small reptile heating mats for a project while it's curing, these are easy, affordable things to use. So go to our site, go to tools, click on the links. These are ones that have been tested by us. We recommend them, and they are affordable. Some of them are large surface area, some are medium, some are small. We have each of those listed in there as well. And they're really great for putting under molds, Rachel, because you want to maintain that mold at a decent temperature. You don't want to heat it.
Yeah.
So you're not making it hotter, but you're making sure it doesn't get colder.
Yeah.
Because that is not going to be your friend. Because again, you don't want to provide a heat source to that epoxy, because what that will do is will change the way it's actually curing. So you may use your heat gun to remove bubbles, but again, the type of heat on your surface area you want to make sure is actually gentle and consistent. So yeah, think about that through. Think, what am I doing on? Rachel, you put a great thing with granite and some of those surfaces that, they remain cold for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
So, wood tables, a little better for dissipating cold. And if you put a heat mat on top of those things, now you're in business and you're doing really well with that. So think about temperature. And if you haven't actually already got a heat gun, again, in the tools section, we have some great links to some really reliable heat guns. They're like $30-$40, and they will be your best friend and save you a ton of money, on everything while you're doing your work.
Yeah. Well, and then if you think about return on investment right there, $40 is really not a lot. That's one product that you sell, maybe.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Depending on what you sell. And that's for people who make smaller crafts. So, but yeah, thank you. And that was, have you ever sat on a stone countertop, even in a warm house? It's chilly. So there's just easy ways around all of those issues for anybody who's working out of their home or, a small office space, a garage, like he said. There's just so many ways to troubleshoot. And if you find yourself having these issues, you're, for whatever reason, not seeing a difference, go ahead and just plug in what you've done so far and what you think the problem is into the AI agent, and it will definitely tell you and give you a plethora of options that it could be. And really, that's going to be your best friend.
Now, that is a great tool. So, Rachel, why don't you go over a few workflow tips so that we can get some better results this winter?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, you can warm the resin bottles before mixing, which is extremely helpful. Even I made some molds, and my resin was definitely on the colder side. It was also when it was very humid out. And when I poured, and I didn't even think about how warm the mold was. I left it outside. I messed up in so many different ways. And my resin literally didn't cure it did, but I took it out and the very bottom of it was super sticky and I just couldn't get the stickiness to go away. And so it was wow, such an easy fix. I could have done it inside instead of doing it outside where it's less humid and where it's less cold. So warming your resin, that can definitely help with situations like that. Pre-warming your molds. So never pour into a cold mold, ever.
Yes, it'll change the temperature straight away. You may have it at 83 degrees or whatever your optimal temperature is. You pour it into a cold mold, it's going to drop instantly.
Yeah. And also using the infrared thermometers to monitor temperatures, the same kind that they use in a doctor's office. You can get those on Amazon for really cheap. And I know that we do have some on the tools link as well from Amazon. But just expect longer cure times, even with good heat control. It can take a little bit. So, if you are seeing wow, this is taking an extra hour or two or whatnot, don't be discouraged by that at all.
Yeah,
that
that's
is
just the winter kicking in.
Yeah, that's the name of the game in the winter time. If you've chosen this, that's one of those things. And really, you're going to have small, nuanced issues with literally any job or business that you are creating. So just bear with it, just the same way you would want somebody to bear with you if you were having a hard time figuring something out. And then avoid temperature swings. So like consistency matters more than peak heat. And I can't stress that enough. Like if you are doing these things, if you are keeping everything at a minimal, like even the minimal heat that is needed, and everything throughout the board is like that, then you're going to be able to go ahead and have a better cure, a quicker cure than you would if you're having cold mold, really hot resin, and then like a heating pad, that you fill the molds, moving them over. There's so many different ways that you can tweak your stuff. So that's what I would say. But how about bubble control in the cold weather? Because I did hear
we talked about that earlier, as in it's an issue, right? But and bubbles are one of those things that drive people up the wall. So I would say this, Rach. I'd say if you're doing a lot of very high-end work, I'd get myself a vacuum chamber, because that actually heats and mixes and helps remove through the process of using it the resin. So you pre-mix it, but you put it in there, and it actually pulls the oxygen out of the air and actually pulls the bubbles out as well, which is fantastic, and warms it. And then warming the resin before you start, back to the basics in the buckets, definitely the way to go. It's, again, targeted heat from above. It makes the top bubbles as they rise to escape, if you have any. I know people have said using HP Ultra, they're amazed with the lack of bubbles that they're finding in that, and especially if they're using a vacuum chamber as well. And then you can really just like start building a process. So when you're working in the winter, in the cold, now you've got less issues, and you're on track to keep earning money. It doesn't have to be a downtime for you. This can be a time to work on projects that are outside of weddings and memorials. Yeah. You can be working on ring holders. You can be working on other different projects that you're doing preservation for, or art pieces, and you don't have to stop just because it's cold. So just remember, and here's our takeaway for you in this: you don't need to stop pouring in the winter. You just need to make sure that you're making changes to your workspace and adding a few little things to make it more appealing. Yeah. With the right setup, winter can be just as productive as summer. So, if you guys are having issues, keep your head up, keep your activity up and your productivity up, and just keep working at those tiny little details, because who knows, in the years to come, you might really thank yourself for taking a little extra time to figure out these issues. Yeah, absolutely. So anyone who wants the article, go to the site and search winter, or even click the AI agent to find out about working in the winter, and you'll go to the article and you'll see Tim's video there. There is a video link as well, and you can click on that link for all the different videos and see the different ideas and techniques that Tim is actually giving to everyone to be able to just do more work with what they've got at any time of the year. It's just a few little tweaks and you're golden. So Rachel, great to have you back on Resin Mastery. Yeah, it was great to be back, and I can't wait until the next episode, guys. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everyone, and we'll see you again on Resin Mastery.